Welcome to the LIPN Podcast, brought to you by the members of the Long Island Professional Network, where business professionals come to grow. Welcome to today's edition of the LIPN Podcast. I'm your host, Merrill Loechner of Smith Douglas Podcast Productions. My mom and I were recently updating our estate plans. As part of that, we wanted to make sure all the important paperwork was easy to find. One question Mom had was, what documents will you need if you want to sell the house? To answer that question, I reached out through the Long Island Professional Network to Lynda Leone of Realty Connect USA. We spoke about the documents I should already have, the paperwork that real estate agents provide, and some great advice about what you need when you want to get ready to sell your home. Thanks for joining us again, everyone. Today we're going to be talking about the documents that you need to sell your house, because there's so much information out there on first-time home buyers. You're a first-time home seller, you may not know exactly all the stuff you need to get together to get the house sold. So today we've got Lynda Leone from Realty Connect USA to help us out. So Lynda, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me, Merrill.
This topic came up in my house. Is my mom and I were putting together all the important documents, and she was saying, well, after I die, you're probably going to sell the house, so I should have all the documents. I'm like, yeah, that would be good. I'll put them all in one folder. Great, that'll make it easy. What should I put in the folder?
Well, most importantly, Merrill, the person who owns the property is the person who could sign the listing agreement. It all goes by ownership. So that's why the first thing I ask people is, do you have a copy of the deed? Who are the rightful owners? Because believe it or not, through the years, ownerships have changed and people aren't even aware of it. Again, if it's an estate and some parent passes, they might not be aware that it's in a trust. Then if that be the case, then we would need the trustee to sign. There's a lot of different variations with regard to who is responsible for the listing agreement.
Okay, so the first thing that goes in that folder is the deed.
Absolutely.
If we can't find the deed or don't know where it is in the house, where can we get a copy?
Well, sometimes the attorney that you contact, they do have access to the public records and they could obtain it for you. But you could go to the Nassau County website and get a copy of the deed for yourself for a small fee. I think it's $15. I'm not quite sure. Don't quote me on that. But you could go get a copy of your deed and they will email it or mail it to you.
Okay, so it really depends on what state, what town, whatever.
Exactly.
But usually the county clerk or a town clerk or someone should at least kind of sort of know where it is. And if nothing else, your real estate attorney should be able to get it for you.
Absolutely. Yes.
Okay, excellent. What's another document besides the deed?
Well, depending, a lot of people don't keep everything intact, but when the property was purchased, regardless how long ago it was, there's a title policy. But not everybody keeps that policy, and you're told at closing to keep that policy. Along with that policy, generally is the survey. Now, surveys change over the year, not because the shape of the property changes. The meets and bounds don't change. Property lines change because people move fences, change fences, and the fences are always put in the proper place. So that's why we always ask you to have a copy of the survey. That is important, but again, a new survey will be generated with the new buyer, and that's when we'll make all the necessary adjustments, if possible, with the title company when you close.
Okay, so if we don't have the original title stuff, Mom bought this house almost 65 years ago.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So I'm pretty sure we don't have it around anymore, but that is something that you or the real estate attorney can find for us?
Not necessarily. Okay.
Really?
Yeah, it might not be there. You might have to go to the township and request a copy of the public records going back when the house was constructed or purchased. Not all those documents are necessarily in the folder. Sometimes we look for old COs and they're not there. A lot of townships have transitioned into digital and things have got lost around the way. Like there's a township Huntington, the town of Huntington had a fire. So there's a lot of documents that people don't have access to anymore.
Now, would that be a problem if I come to you like, I live in Huntington, there's no documentation because of the fire? Can I never sell my house?
No, you can. There's a public record of the transactions. The copy of the deed is the most important thing.
Okay, excellent. So we've got the deed, title if we've got it, survey if we've got it. What about tax records? Is that something I'm going to need to show you for anything?
No, if you have your tax bill, that's good because the listing agent, again, as the listing agent, I have to verify the taxes. So, again, I would go on different websites to be able to verify the taxes. I need those taxes in order, as part of the listing agreement, you must state the taxes exactly the way they are.
Okay. What if I have a mortgage or if I've paid off a mortgage? Do you need that
Um,
any of those documents?
No, that's not necessary. That you would discuss with your attorney when it comes time when the house goes to contract and you close, that's when the necessary adjustments will be made. You would get a final payoff letter. You would tell the mortgage company that you're moving, that you need a final payoff, and the title company will actually do that for you, and they will request a final payoff, and those adjustments and those payoffs will be done at closing.
Okay, so if there's still a mortgage and I want to sell the house, when do I get my mortgage company involved? Once I've
Once
called the
you
real estate agent, or do I
Yes.
call the mortgage? It's like, hey, I'm thinking about putting my house up for sale.
No, that's not necessary. It's once you go into contract and you have a closing date, then you request a final payoff.
Okay. And if I've already paid off my mortgage, I should have that paperwork still with me?
Yes. You would need a mortgage satisfaction letter. Now that also causes problems also through the years, through many, many years. You have a bank, a dime bank. There's so many banks that have gone under and have merged. So people must always hold on to their satisfaction of mortgage. And it does create some problem at sometimes because you have to go back. Sometimes a bank is sold and then it's sold again and it's sold again. And sometimes it's not easy to find. They do eventually locate the final document. But if you paid off your home, anybody, I recommend to please put that satisfaction of mortgage with your deed and with all your papers for your house because that's a very important document to have.
Excellent. Any other document we should get together before we even call you?
No, that's it. The most important thing is all the documents that we're going to need in order to put your home on the market. There is, mandatory documents. There's a listing agreement, which again, commissions are not discussed. They're all subjective. So then you have a certain commission charge. Now, with the new listing agreements, you do not have to pay a buyer's agent. So that's something that's discussed with the listing agent. There is a property description form, it's very, very detailed. We go page by page about the roof, what kind of heat you have,
Isn't that
what kind
something
of
that's new?
flooring. Excuse me,
I-
yes. Now that we always had to have a property description form. The new forms that have been out through the last several years, not recently, is a fair housing disclosure indicating and stating that both the agent and yourself are going to follow all fair housing laws, that you will not discriminate. If a house is built prior to 1978, there's a lead based disclosure. Prior to 1978, there was lead in the paint. So then you would have to disclose whether you had knowledge or not had knowledge of lead paint in the house. The buyer then would also have an area that they would have to respond, that they would either test for the lead or waive the opportunity to test. There is an agency disclosure, which is one of the most important disclosures. That would create a relationship between the agent and the seller. Okay. We have a fiduciary responsibility to our sellers, and that is obedience, loyalty, disclosure, confidentiality, accountability, and reasonable care. We have to protect our seller. We are not allowed to disclose any information about them. A common question I get all the time, where is the buyer moving? Well, sometimes where's the seller moving? Seller sometimes doesn't mind, but we just say, why are they moving? Why are they moving? They want another house. I mean, you don't discuss people's financial situations. If there's a problem, you don't discuss people's marital status. It's a personal relationship between you and the seller. And of course, people ask a lot of questions, and you have to keep that confidentiality. And again, you have to obey everything that the seller asks you to. If the seller says, I don't want any showings after 6 o'clock, you have to put that on the listing, no showings after 6 o'clock. So we have a fiduciary to the seller when we list the property. After that, the other forms are, just that's the basic forms that you have to, and they're very inclusive. So
Mhm.
it does take a time to get a listing agreement together.
Okay, so yeah, it's the, "Hi, I wanna sell my house." There's gonna be paperwork, as in
Lots of paperwork.
there is always paperwork with these
Right.
things.
Hmm.
What are some of the things that you have seen that have tripped you up or slowed things down when people started to fill out a form that they either should have known before they called you or couldn't have possibly have known before they called you?
Okay. COs create a large problem in today's market.
What is a CO?
Okay, a certificate of occupancy. An original home, when it was built, most of Long Island, the 40s, 50s, 60s, all have COs. Again, they should be at the township. Not all of them are properly placed. Sometimes they're misplaced. But what we find is there's open permits. A home had some construction done. Okay, post post original build. On many occasions, that building permit was never closed out. So then that creates what we call an open permit. And through the years, title companies didn't mind. We're going back 50s, 60s, even early 70s and 80s. A title company would still insure a property with an open permit. Things have since changed. Banks don't care if there's open permits. The majority of banks don't care. It's the titling company. They won't insure the property unless all the paperwork is legitimate with the town. So now what that creates is most people then have to get an expediter, or they have to do the process by themselves to close out that permit. And it's very involved because if you did work on your house, and we see it a lot, it's not an unusual thing. Someone did work on the house in 1980. Well, the building codes from 1980 are different from what they are in 2025. So now you're going to close out your permit in 2025. Electrical codes have changed. You might have an electrical inspector come in and we'll just take a very simple thing. You redid your kitchen. You extended the kitchen. Back in the 80s and 90s, you might not have required a GFCI. So now you have to put a GFCI in. So now that building permit has to conform with today's building codes. So that's why it holds things up. I could go through a slew of items. Percentage of lot coverage. Those codes have changed. You're only allowed to build a certain percentage of your building on your lot, depending on the size of your lot. Sometimes that changed. So now you're going to close out the permit. It might create now a percentage of lot cut variance. So getting a building permit closed out and done properly is the most important thing. And I say that to anybody I know that's building or saying, oh, gee, because I do construction and I have a degree in interior design. So people come to me for advice. Gee, I'm thinking of adding something. I'm going to get a contractor. You better make sure you get a permit. You better make sure you close out your permit.
"Oh,
That's
my
the most
contractor said I
important thing
don't
to
need a
do.
permit." What?
Right, contracts will say that, but you need that permit. Because what happens is, I'll give you a case in point. The original survey might be found from the title company,
Mhm,
okay? So now you have, let's take a plain Levitt home. You have this cute little structure that was built by Levitt in 1945, 46, 47. It's a certain size. Now a new survey is done when the new buyer buys it, and they say, oh, where did that extra 20 feet come from? Where did that second story dormer comes from? The second story dormer won't be found on the survey, but the extension of the property. The new attorney is going to say, wow. They compare the survey. Sometimes they go, do they have a permit for that extra 20 feet they added on the house? So
mhm.
this is why the more information you could provide to the realtor at the time you're ready to list your house, the easier the process could be. That's when we could catch all the problems and start remedying them.
Where can I find out if my house has any open permits? Because I mean,
Uh,
my dad was a contractor too, and yeah, he added things, and I'm not 100% sure he had permits for everything,
right.
or if he did, if they ever got closed.
Correct. You know the township that you live in. So you go to the town, you fill out a freedom of information. But since you're the owner, you could still have it. You pay a small fee. They will go research your file and they will show you everything that pertains to that file. You might very well have an open permit, not know it. I mean, garage conversions is a typical example. A lot of people converted their garage and they figured, okay, I stayed within that space. Okay, I didn't do anything to the house, but now the garage is no longer a garage. And some people make issues about it and some people don't. So that's why it's a good way to see if it's been converted, if you have a certificate of occupancy for it.
So this is probably something that you should do before planning to sell the house, especially if you're kind of in a rush, because you might as well have everything ready to go. Because sometimes you want to sell the house and you can have your time, and sometimes it's the oh my God, we have my husband's gotten a job, we have to move to California, we need to get the house sold, and then suddenly to discover there's open COs, there's other problems. What do you mean there's lead in the walls? That's going to really slow down the sale.
Right. In other words, your time frame, I usually ask people, when are you ready to move? Because if their paperwork is not in order, if they're thinking of moving in 2 or 3 months, that might not be possible. Sometimes it could take 6 months I've seen it take up to a year to rectify CO issues that haven't been closed out.
Okay, so we need the deed, all the title information, if you've got the original designs, and definitely want to make sure you've got all the permits closed.
Right. I would say the title policy most people don't have, or they don't know where it is.
Hmm.
They know they got it, but they just can't find it. Your deed and the ownership is the most important thing, because those are the only people who can sign a listing agreement are the people who own the home.
I have heard there's been some scary things where people can steal your deed and say, "Oh no, it's under my name now." How has that been happening?
I'm not that familiar. Thank God I don't know anybody that's happened to, but we did hear somebody recently get a phone call, an insurance agent that we know got a phone call from somebody saying requesting a copy of the policy, or knowing what the limits are on the policy. And he right away, an alarm went off in his mind. So he called the owner, who happened to be very elderly, happened to be, I think, close to 90 years old. He goes, "What are you talking about? I'm not selling my house." That's a tip off that someone's trying to transfer that policy because they're looking for a new insurance policy. I don't know how that happens, because I just know from a legal standpoint, in order to close on a property, you have to go to the closing table. You have to provide proof of ownership. You have to provide a license that matches the deed or trustee.
Mhm.
And that's how a title company then, records everything, is able to record it, because they're notarizing that you are legitimate. How that illegitimately happens, I can't lie to you. I don't know.
Yeah, no, it's
But we hear about it all the time. That's why you have
there's a
these
lot of
policies,
scary
life
things.
locks. I mean, I
Yep.
don't know what that's all about.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's always pretty terrifying there. So, okay, so we've filled out all the forms. We've got a potential buyer. Are there any other forms that we're going to need once we have proposal coming in?
Well, what happens is you are gonna get a contract of sale. The contract of sale gets created and distributed by the seller's attorney. So you, again, as the seller, would contact an attorney,
Hmm.
and you would tell him, "I'm selling my home." I then would have to submit to him the property condition disclosure. That's one thing I've got to say that was important. A seller has to complete a property condition disclosure. Years ago, New York State said to all the buyers back in the '80s. Actually, Governor Pataki created the law. You don't have to fill out the property disclosure statement. Just give the buyer a $500 credit, and you don't have to disclose anything about your house. Well, Governor Hochul enacted a new property disclosure form, which is about 7, 8 pages long, that now the sellers are required to complete. And it's a breakdown of all the history about your house, what you know, what you don't know. Of course, we don't know everything, because you might have bought your house in 1990. The house was built in 1945. We don't know what happened 30 years before then, but you have to complete it to the best of your ability. Then that gets forwarded over to the attorney also, so that he could review it. They share it with the buyer to see if there's any problems. But then again, the buyer's going to do a home inspection. So the home inspection is going to give them basically all the information about the current condition of the property. And again, A home inspection's not done to try to get money off the house. It's done to educate you about the property, learning what you're going to need to do to maintain a home, when you need to do certain things. That's what I always describe to my buyers also. Don't think we do this. We do this for your knowledge so you know about your home.
Would you recommend to a seller to have pay for their own home inspection to get an idea of what the buyer's home inspector may find out?
Yes, I have that. Yes, in the past, people have asked me, do they generally do it? No, because they know someone would. But depending on the condition of the house.
Hmm.
I walk through a house and listen, I don't know everything. I know a lot about construction, but I could tell if there's going to be a problem. I just had a house where I suspected asbestos, but again, I wasn't knowledgeable enough. And sure enough, there was asbestos and it killed the deal. I've since taken a class on asbestos again, but there are a lot of things in a home that could kill a deal. So having that pre-inspection is a very good thing. It's even as simple as your hot water heater valve has a little rust on it, and which means it had a leak. You change that little valve out, then no one could complain about it. People get very, very scary when they hear leaks, when they see things. A home by law has to be free of leaks. That's really one of the most major things. You can't have a leaky roof. You can't have leaky plumbing. Your heat has to work and your electric has to work. Your
Nice.
walls, you can have chipped walls, chipped paint. That's
Hmm.
not going to, have any bearing on the property selling.
Interesting. So you've finally agreed on everything. You're coming to closing. Oh, look, more paperwork. So when closing, when you're a seller, how does that work?
You'll go to closing. You will sign the transfer of the deed. The other documents that you sign are you're going to pay the transfer tax. It's 0.25% that you pay on the sale of the home, which is $4 per thousand you pay as transfer tax on the property. And that goes to New York State. That does not go to the buyer. It's not a credit to the buyer. You pay a $4 per thousand for the transfer tax to New York State.
Okay, we were talking about inspection before, and I just had curious. Is there anything with land inspection? Someone comes around and like looks at the house, but like, oh, that tree's looking a little sick. Get a heavy wind, it could fall on your house. Is there any property inspection that?
Not that I know of. Not that I know of. People really, a building inspector is exactly what they are. They're a building inspector. They just, look at the property. Again, prior to you selling the home, if you feel that there's things around your home that can create a problem, a dead tree that might fall,
Mhm.
then that's something that you could take care of by yourself. Call your landscaper and is there anything I need to do?
Mhm. Yeah, no, that made sense when I was selling my condo. I'm like, "Well, I've got a dead washing machine," and my agent just like, "Get a new one." "Oh, can I?" It's
Exactly.
like, "No," because they think even if it's a dead washing machine, they're gonna think, "What else is broken?" So
Right,
just
exactly.
go
And I
go get a cheap one, they can always get a new one, just get a working washing machine in there.
Right, right, and what I do again, when people are ready to list their property, I walk through it with them. Because again, I do professional photos, sometimes I do a floor plan depending on the house. And you have one opportunity to make a first impression. So again, we walk around the outside, things to clean up, how to place things, put a fresh pot of flowers on the front stoop, just again to make the home appealing. Paint your front door. Sometimes it's easy as just painting your front door. Keep the place clutter free. Again, one opportunity to make a first impression that goes for it when someone walks in your home. They have 7 to 10 seconds. Someone knows if they want the house.
Sometimes they'll know right away just from the front of the house saying, "No."
Exactly.
And so, yeah, you want the front of the house to look good, you want the inside of the house, you want the backyard to look good. You don't wanna have a
Absolutely.
a a pristine front, a beautiful house, and you look in the backyard and there's, like, knocked over swing set and old kids' toys out there, so, yeah,
Right.
it
But then again, we have buyers that are looking for the worst house so that they could get a good deal and fix it up themselves. Like I said, every situation presents itself differently.
roughly the timeline on that, because if someone comes to you like, "I need to sell my house right away," versus, kinda sorta thinking about selling a house, maybe retire to Florida, just wanted to check out what's roughly the timeline if nothing goes catastrophically wrong? If there's no liens on the home, if there's no open permits, if everything goes smoothly, I guess it really depends the current market, where you are, number of buyers, number of sellers, that sort of thing.
Right. Well, in New York, you could close again. A cash deal could close within 2 weeks. People order a title policy. They have the cash and they could close. Some people are pre-approved for a mortgage and have all their documents in line, and they've already been underwritten through the bank. So they're just looking for a contract of sale. So we've seen things, again, title always has to get ordered. These things close as soon as 30 days. I would say right now we're averaging 45 to 60 days. But then there's situations where I just had one where the woman had to sell first because of personal reasons, needed needed to know she was secure in her deal so that she could purchase another home. So now this one is going to 90 days. So the buyer and the seller are still okay with closing within 90 days. Everybody works out the terms that agree with them. Now, as far as I've just have a seller that I'm going to be listing their condo, they already have their home in Florida. They want to move in October. So we're listing it next week. You figure give yourself 30 to 40 days to find a buyer, then another 45 days to close. Now, they don't have to close October 1st. They would like to. So we're starting in July, August, September, October 1st. 3 months should be plenty of time to find them a buyer and meet their closing date. It might extend a little further, but they don't mind. That's why we figured let's wait till after a holiday in July and list the house.
So any other advice for first-time home sellers? I remember dealing with one real estate agent. Her biggest bugaboo was the homeowner wanting to help show the house and tell the story of the home. And
No.
let me tell you why I'm selling. And she's like, oh my God.
Yeah. I always recommend it's nice. It's ideal if the seller leaves the home when you're showing the property because people don't always like to talk in front of people. The buyer sometimes wants to look a little longer and might have a question and they don't like to ask, or they might feel they're insulting someone, so they don't really fully talk about the property. So ideally, a seller could leave. I ask the seller to just like make themselves there, but you know, inconspicuous, go sit in the dining room, sit in the den and read a book. As we pass by, just say, hi, how are you? Sit in the backyard if it's a nice day out. Go for a walk your dog. If someone has a dog, again, no dogs. You have to remove the pets. Cats are okay. Some people are squeamish about that too, but you remove your dog. If the dog is inside the house, go for a walk. It really is ideal for the house to be vacant, but it's not always possible. So you make yourself as inconspicuous as possible.
Yeah, my real estate agent says, go to the coffee shop. We'll call you when we're done. It's like, okay.
Exactly.
So get out. And any other advice for a first-time home seller?
No, just find the agent that you could relate to. It's about a relationship. Interview several people, find out who you're comfortable with. Again, I understand it. It's a big thing. Your property is your greatest asset. So you have to be comfortable with whoever you're working with. You have to trust whoever you're working with because, like you said, you'll be doing open houses. There's not going to be anybody there but your realtor. You have to trust someone with your property. So interview people, find someone who meshes with you, and let the real estate agent do their job.
Excellent. If anyone else has any questions, especially trying to buy and sell here on Long Island, how can people reach out to you?
They can look for me. They can obviously call me 516-317-4265. That's my cell number. I'm always available. If I don't pick up the phone, I promise I'll call you back. You could also email me through my email, and that's LyndaLeone@gmail, and it's Lynda, LYNDALEONE @gmail.com.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. This was very useful. Have a wonderful week.
You too. Thank you for inviting me, Merrill. Have a great day.
Thank you for listening to the LIPN Podcast, brought to you by the Long Island Professional Network and produced by Smith Douglas Podcast Productions. To learn more about the LIPN, visit our website at lipn.org or join our meetup under Long Island Professional Network.